All right, I am ready. Are you ready?
I am ready. Ready for dramatic increase in audio quality. I don't know if you use the audio from
Oh,
our
I do
microphones.
sometimes. But is everybody ready for a dramatic increase?
Increase. Let's just
Remember,
click the button.
hot water can scald in less than
Hot water
20
can
seconds.
scald in less than 3 seconds. I quote that all the time to people, and they're like, "What are you talking about?"
I just wait for some little child to grab my handle and then.
Anyway, you ready?
Yeah,
All right, here we go. Three, two, one, click.
clicked.
We done did clicked it.
We have officially clicked it, and we no longer sound like hot garbage. Like like the hottest garbage.
Like sad trash.
Like sad trash. I mean, I we are sad trash.
We are sad trash.
Like,
That
take
is
it from
true.
us, ladies and gentlemen. We are sad trash.
Sad
I only-
trash.
Yes, yes. My jeans, trash. That's all I produce.
Incorrect.
That's not true. You are the creme of the crop.
Nope.
Yep. Top of the heap.
I'm learning how to drive now.
You are learning how to drive. Me crazy. Am I right?
I was already able to do that.
Comedy.
Jokes.
Yeah, but you are learning how to drive. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have driven for 2 hours.
You did have driven all around the neighborhood, huh? On a pretty gloomy day.
Yeah, right at rush hour.
But you know what? You jump in with both feet
You do.
because then the easy days will be easier.
Yeah. I think actually driving around, the guy was talking to me and he was like, driving around this neighborhood is harder than driving most places because of how narrow the streets are.
Yep. Yep. I hate driving around our little neighborhoods. They are starty and stoppy, and people are always in the middle of the road.
Yep.
But you know what would be a worse place to drive around in?
Wherever this is,
Post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C.
it's so good.
in the 2050s or whenever it is.
I was so confused as to what time period this story took place in for the first, 3 pages.
This entire this week's story, everything about this story is a mystery. First of all, hey everybody, I'm Phil,
And I'm Willow.
and it's
It's
Del Toro
Del
time.
Toro time.
It's Del Toro time. We are back with the not the ecstasy of influence. I did it again.
We're back with the Dark Descent.
The Dark Descent. What is it?
The
a long
shadows
and fitful
of
sleep.
the fantastic,
The formulous,
fabulous, formless darkness.
Doctor Crazy and the Fantabulous Formless. Yes, Fabulous Formless Darkness. We are talking about it's horror that is vague, and what is reality, and everything is weird. And what's weird is this story is probably the most borderline horror story we've read. At least The Reach had ghosts in it, but like The Reach, the horror inherent in this story is far deeper than.
Are you saying this is the first? Wait, I'm confused as to what you're claiming here.
What I'm claiming is this story. I can see many people reading this story and going, "This isn't a horror story. This is science fiction, if anything."
I read it as weird fiction.
Social science fiction. Yeah, but it is horrific.
Yeah.
Just not visceral. I mean, I don't know. What is this story that we're reading?
The story is 7 American Nights.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that a play on
Yes? No? Maybe?
No.
1001 Arabian Nights?
Yeah, maybe.
It's yes.
Yeah.
I will go on record as saying yes, considering that there are a lot of Persian names in the story, and a lot of references to Persian literature, and
Yeah.
the literary allusions in this story begin on page 1, and they don't let up.
Mm-hmm.
1001. No, not 1001. 7 American Nights. Do you know what the irony of that title is?
Probably not.
The irony being, he only ever talks about 6 nights.
Oh.
There's a missing night in the story, and that's one of the many mysteries of this story. Gene Wolfe. What would happen if a wolf wore jeans? Why, he would be
An author.
a Gene Wolfe. He would be a celebrated author of sci-fi and fantasy.
Yep.
A not only a celebrated author of science fiction and fantasy, but one of the most celebrated authors of science fiction fantasy, literary sci-fi fantasy, and also very religious man. Very religious man who filled his stories with critiques of religion. He is not originally from, but he grew up in Houston, Texas.
Oh.
Went to high school and college there. He attended Lamar High School in Houston, where I've been to it. He went to Texas A&M University. Go Aggies, I guess. And his first his first publishing was in a student literary journal called The Commentator. He fought in the Korean War. He got a degree in the University of Houston, became an industrial engineer, but he just kept on writing. Now, here's something interesting about Gene Wolfe. His most famous engineering achievement is he contributed to the machine that makes Pringles.
Hell yeah.
We would not have, well, we probably would have them, but we would not have what we think of as Pringles without Gene Wolfe. His most famous work is Book of the New Sun, which is like this multi-volume fantasy epic.
Mm-hmm.
He knew J.R.R. Tolkien. They were correspondents. He is considered one of the most underrated authors of all time by people in his circles. Neil Gaiman credits him as an inspiration. Harlan Ellison considered him one of the greatest authors to ever live. He won multiple awards, World Fantasy Awards, Sci-Fi Fantasy Awards. He was the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America Grand Master in 2012. He was a guest of honor at the 1985 World Science Fiction Convention. He received the Edward E. Smith Skylark Award in 1989. He is just award winner. Wrote a ton of books, run a ton of short stories. There are a ton of books about him. And then he died in 2019 at the age of 87 in Illinois.
Damn.
And that's Gene Wolfe. A right jolly old elf. That's all I have to say. From what I could tell, he was a nice guy. That's all I could.
Yeah.
That's the beginning and ending. I can't imagine he was not a nice guy. If you want to know what a nice guy was, that's what he looked like, ladies and gentlemen. Gene Wolfe. How can this guy not be nice? I mean, look at him. Look at him. He's got a
taking
mustache.
a picture behind him.
He's got a oh my gosh. There's what I thought was an exit sign behind him, but it says stairs.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, we are looking at the Gene Wolfe picture from his Wikipedia page. And again, he looks like, in this picture, he looks like future Mario.
Oh my god, you have so many tabs open.
I do have a lot of tabs open. This is my research. This is how I do research. I just open tab after tab, and I look for pictures of celebrities. Like this one. Zelda Rubinstein, young. Because I wanted to know if Zelda Rubinstein ever looked young.
I see, I see.
She played the medium in Poltergeist.
Okay.
The answer to that question, no, she never actually did look young. Stop the share. So that's Gene Wolfe. And at some point he wrote this story, 7 American Nights.
It's a really good story.
Yeah, let's right off the bat, let's just say that I think we both really liked this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1978, originally published in Orbit 20. edited by Damon Knight. Yeah, so this came out after I was born, but before I could read.
If you hear my keyboard clicking in the recording, I apologize.
I thought you had disappeared for a second.
Nope. I was looking
yeah.
something up.
This is in multiple like greatest science fiction collections of all time, or greatest science fiction story collections, not greatest science fiction collections of all time. I can't get my hat straight. This is driving me nuts. Okay, so what's weird is if you look at all of these collections that this story has been in, not a single one of them mention horror. Just science fiction. So what does our buddy, David G. Hartwell, have to say about the story? Why is it here? What does it say?
Well, it says that it is a complex and horrifying vision of the future, strange, elusive, and ambiguous. It really feels like this is a story that was put in here after Smoke Ghost. As a, like if it's not considered horror, as a, like, continuation of a theme.
Yeah.
Like the Jolly Corner, Smoke Ghost, and this are like a solid trio.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you're saying. They form a nice triptych about like the horror of the city and the horror of American society. Yeah, like one is solidly set in the past, one is solidly about the present, and this one is solidly about the future, and they are all horrific for different reasons.
He also
says it's a Posian cryptogram.
Yeah.
Which I was reading the book Between Light and Shadow, an exploration of the fiction of Gene Wolfe from 1951 to 1986. And it has a whole section on this story. And the author says in his introduction to this story that many writers like to leave this, say, and then at the end of it, you're not sure what's real or not, and it's intentionally ambiguous. And he's like, absolutely not. This is one of the few stories that is meant to be solved. You are supposed to go back and figure out what the heck really happened. It's not supposed to be like, and it's up to what you think. It's more like, no, there are clues all through this story as to what's really going on. And even though we can never be sure, you're supposed to do the work and try to figure. It's a hard story.
Yeah.
So, at the risk of being here all night, what is this story about?
Well, it's an epistolary story, told through journal entries, which are some of my favorite types of stories, actually.
Yeah.
It's about a man named something.
Nadan Jafarzadeh.
Nadan Jafarzadeh, who is visiting America.
Yes.
From
Iran.
Yeah. And it takes place after some horrible event in the future. Like, they called it the eclipse. Right, but... it seemed to, like, block out the sun or something.
It's very vague what actually happened.
And then there's talk of, like, discovering, like, oh, there's actually only one of each, like, electron, proton, blah, 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 blah.
The upshot of which is that America has destroyed itself.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of places, like, struggled, but America was hit the hardest.
Yes.
And everyone there has, like, various genetic issues, and stuff. And it's all. I would say that it goes a little beyond genetic issues. Well, yeah.
Like most people are the walking like melted. They are.
Yeah.
And then there's some people maybe who are beyond simply like deformed, who might actually be a whole new form of life.
Yeah. It reminded me of Innsmouth at first.
Yeah.
Because I did not I was trying to figure out what the heck was happening for the first few pages, because I didn't realize that it took place in the future at first. And I was like, is this like is this set in like an H.P. Lovecraft like kind of universe? Like, is there something wrong with this town? And then they were like laser pistol, and I was like, oh, okay.
Right. It's so just like, he doesn't hold your hand through any, well, because it's a journal entry. So the guy's writing a letter or a journal, presumably in the beginning to his girlfriend.
Yeah,
her
or
to
his
read.
mother.
Yeah. Oh, because it's presented as a detective has given this journal to his mother and girlfriend, and now they are reading it because he disappeared. So these are the only entries that are in his journal.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah,
but
so he's come. Yeah.
Yeah, he shows up on a ship. He's pretty stoked to be there because the water's all funky.
No pun intended. Because ships have stokers.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stoker ship.
I really liked the beginning of this story. I thought it really developed, like, his, like, character really well. Like, this is a man who is excited to be, like, exploring and looking around. And he has the confidence to be excited in front of other people who are not excited.
Yeah, he is presumably a tourist. As far as the journal allows you to know. At this point.
Yeah, it does.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much like after the first couple of entries. No, after the first entry. Or wait, no. He writes in the morning and then he writes in the evening.
Yeah.
Of the first night. And after that, he is like, so Yasmin can't read this.
Yes.
And Yasmin's his partner or his girlfriend.
Right. Even though he does sleep with at least two different people in the course of this.
Yeah.
A sex worker, at least one sex worker, maybe three, and the female protagonist of the story. Or plot point. I don't even know like what her motives at the end of the day are. It's so weird. But the structure of this story is that it's titled 7 American Nights. We get a description of the 6 days leading up to his disappearance.
Yep.
During which time he goes to the theater a lot. He visits the Smithsonian Institute. He meets horribly mutated people.
He buys someone a sandwich.
He does buy someone a sandwich. A museum curator, presumably, who is working on a machine that can... Basically, it's AI. It's an AI machine that can perfectly replicate the writing style and handwriting of anyone. Oh, by the way, we're reading a journal. So yeah, it's one of those things you got to keep in mind.
Yeah.
There is some kind of conspiracy going on with two guys named... Oh, what are their names? Tallman.
Yeah.
And Gassam.
Yep.
Tallman and Gassam. He falls in love with an actress in a play who he wants so desperately to be with. A guy arranges to set them up, but then the guy tries to rob him. He ends up getting the guy arrested, so the woman is like, please help me get this guy out. He's an actor. We need him in a show. But then you find out that they might be tied up in this conspiracy. The whole thing is... Oh, yeah, and he buys drugs at one point. And then he buys the curator candy eggs, and he reserves 6 for himself, and he doses one of the candy eggs with the drugs.
Yeah.
And then he's going to eat one each day, never knowing which one has the drugs in it.
Yep. To see if there's any drugs in them.
What?
To see if there's actually any drugs, like...
Right, but also you never know if any of these days are the result of a drug-induced hallucination.
Yep.
But also he doesn't know, but also he
But-
never stops bringing that up.
But also, like, placebo effect, question mark.
Exactly. Because he keeps thinking, he's like, wait a minute, this could all have been my imagination from the drugs. And then the next day he's like, wait a minute, this could all have been my imagination.
Yeah.
He gets attacked by a werewolf monster at one point.
Who was there's another, like, writer that he talks about. What was his name? Osman? Osman, yeah. Who, like, wrote about, like, traveling the world and stuff, who nobody,
Yeah.
like, believes their, like, the stories of. There's like he's like, he wrote about these creatures and no one believed him. So there's that thing where it's like, is he seeing things because of the drugs that he has read about? Or
Right.
was this other guy, like, not actually, like, lying?
Yeah, and he doesn't get his gun up, his laser gun, by the way, up in enough time to shoot the animal, but then he gets knocked out, and when he comes to, the animal has been shot.
Yeah.
So are people following him and trying to keep him alive? Or are people following him and trying to kill him? We don't know. We know that his room gets ransacked at one point because the candy eggs get moved around.
And one of them goes missing.
That's right. One of them goes missing.
Which could be the drugged one.
Could be the drugged one. It could not be. The two men, Tallman and Gassman, they were on the boat with him when he arrives in America. And he finds out that the woman, Artis, her name is, that he has fallen in love with, is in cahoots with them. They are going to fund an exploration into the heart of old America to seek out treasures. And you get some hints. You know that he has a goal, a secret goal, to break into the National Gallery and steal some figurines to bring back to Iran.
Yep.
And that apparently he had written about this in his journal at one point, but then he excised that part of the entry.
Yeah, he writes about that because he doesn't want it to be discovered because someone ransacked his room.
Right. Which is one of the theories that one of the reasons there's only 6 days here is because he went to the National Gallery at one point, and when he excised that chunk, he excised the end of one entry and the beginning of another, or the beginning of another entry, so that one entry just... And there's all these clues, like his windows are shut at one point, and then without any reference to them opening, they are suddenly open, and people are like, well, this must be the next day. Like, it's little things like that all throughout the story that are just, like, mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Ugh. So there's a whole thing with bread mold.
Yeah, because he talks about American food for a bit.
Yeah.
And, like, preserving preservatives and stuff.
Mm-hmm. How, like, America, like, developed preservatives that were so good that might be what screwed up people's, like, biology. I won't even say it's vague. It's just, there's so much information that you could miss it.
Because the werewolf creature that he encounters, he talks about how, like, supposedly they're from people who, during, like, the Great Calamity or whatever, like, consumed other human flesh because the livestock had chemicals in them that were altering, like, bodies and stuff. But they didn't realize that it was actually, like, humans had way more of it in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just, like a lot of stuff.
So people got mutated just partly because of the genetically altered food and partly because they ate people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's you think the story's gone about as dark as it's going to get.
But also,
and then you're like, oh, cannibalism.
A lot of it is, like, hearsay.
Yup, because there's no real records, and you are in America where no one has told the truth about anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people are horribly mutated in some ways.
Yeah. He talks to a guy who's missing his lower jaw.
Right.
Like, he goes to visit a park at one point, after being told not to because it's dangerous. And there's, like, dogs and people, and he kills a dog person or a dog, and, like, these people in the park seem to be more able-bodied than the others, so he doesn't want to give them any money. It's a weird scene. It kind of, like...
Yeah. And there's theories that those people in the park are actually undercover agents, because you learn a lot about the way the criminal justice system works. There's like all these levels of policing. It's very Brazil. He has to go to he goes to like the police station to try to
Brazil
get
the movie, by the way.
Right. He goes to the police station to try to get this guy out, and he just keeps getting shuttled back and forth to all these different like bureaucrats who he hasn't signed the right form or talked to the right person.
He's not initially going to even press charges on the guy because he feels bad, but the cops are like, please press charges. We just beat the crap out of this guy. Yeah,
the cops come and they beat the crap out of him, and then they're like, look, if you don't have him arrested, if you don't want to press charges, then we're going to get in trouble for beating the crap out of him. And he's like, okay, fine. Yeah, it's ugly, and the whole thing is nightmarish. And it's all set in Washington, D.C. So he's... Yeah. One of my favorite parts is where he gets shown the ruins of like the former like head, like the palace where the head of the United States used to live, and he's like, no one remembers what it was called, so they all just call it the White House. And I just I just thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, and he really wants to bang this woman. Like, he really does.
I was part of me was like, can you stop talking about this woman, please?
Yeah, he becomes
I want to know more about everything else.
But she does become a major player in the story. And she's also like manipulating him.
Oh yeah.
In a lot of ways. There's a scene where he like calls down to get sex workers sent up, and the person renting out the room to him like sends up 3 women. And he chooses one who looks enough like the woman that he's obsessed with, but then she also has a club foot, which is like what someone else. So there's all this theories about whether like there's all this stuff about gender, and like it gets, there's a lot of theories about this story.
Yeah. It's a really like weirdly upsetting story. Like I didn't really know how to feel about the protagonist the entire time.
Well, because you don't really get to know what he's really all about, because he's lying half the time, and the other half the time, well, his room gets ransacked. He ends up sleeping with artists, but she won't let him turn on the lights while they're being intimate. So during one of their intimate moments, he uses his laser gun to shoot at... What are you picking at your head for?
My forehead is itchy.
Yeah, I can tell.
Sorry,
I keep expecting you to be like...
I've been a demon this whole time.
Like the scene in Poltergeist. Like, I feel like you're going to just like rip off your face. No. He shoots a laser gun at a glass of wine and ignites the alcohol and is able to momentarily see the woman in the nude. Something so horrible that he kills her. Maybe kills her. We don't really know. And he's arrested, presumably, disappears, presumably. He also may have run to the interior of the United States, but there's also the fact that the whole last chunk of the story might not even have been written by him, and it might have been written by that computer in the Smithsonian that can imitate anybody's cadence and handwriting, because the secret police may have gotten him and fabricated the end so people don't figure out what he was really there for. Also, I think the United States is planning to invade or poison all the other countries with what infected them. Like, that's another thing going on. There's this conspiracy to send out this poison grain or whatever all over the world, a la The Last of Us, to kill
Yep.
everybody else. Yeah, also, there might be a fungus covering all the buildings that is starting to fruit and bloom.
Yep.
We don't know.
It's a really weird story.
Yeah, it is super strange.
But the last
really well written.
section, it is really well written. The last section of the story isn't him, it's Yasmin and his mother,
Yes.
who have finished reading it, and they're like, first of all, there is just the word gem simulator is dropped,
Yep.
which, great. Oh, and there's the two things linking the beginning and end of this story, or one thing linking the beginning and end of this story, with the first letter from the only letter from the like investigator, is that he writes, "Hey, I haven't like gotten payment or any like thing from you guys yet, like in a while, like maybe the letters and stuff are being delayed because this place sucks." And the ending of this, they talk about letters also being delayed, which makes me
Yes.
think there's something going on with like the post as well between all of these people, which could lend to the idea that he's been taken by other people.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also,
The investigator note at the beginning might not be the investigator at all.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theories about which day, if any, he ate the hallucinatory egg on. Part of the theory is that he wasn't sold a hallucinogen, he was sold a poison,
Yeah.
with them expecting him to just take the poison that night, and then when he doesn't, they're like, what's going on? And now he's poisoned one of the eggs, but he doesn't know which one. And that's why they break into his house. Like there's a lot of these weird. This is a strange story that's very hard to summarize.
Yeah.
It's also highly specific about the layout of Washington. So if you know DC, particularly DC in like the late 70s, I guess it like maps really well. It all makes
Nice.
very much sense. It's very much like the story you read.
Yeah.
Where I was like, wait, this is just Liverpool. This is exactly Liverpool.
Yeah, what was that story? It was Macintosh Willie.
Yeah, Macintosh Willie. So there's a lot of theories. I suggest if anyone wants to know about these wild theories about the story, just pick up the Between Light and Shadow, an exploration of the fiction of Gene Wolfe. This chapter is long, and it just breaks it all down. Not only like the author's theories, but competing theories from other authors. So and like he like picks them apart and he's like, well, here's the alterations I would make to this theory. You know what doesn't help though is that one of the people who's written about it is named Tallman.
Oh.
So it gets really confusing at times if he's talking about the character Tallman or the guy Tallman who's writing about the story. Trust me, I had to read one chapter twice. Also, you can't see this if you're just listening to the episode, but
Cat.
a kitty,
Artemis.
a kitty. Artemis came and jumped on my lap. Artemis came, what do you think of that? Artemis is here.
She looks
Artemis is
like she regrets it.
here. And she jumped on my lap. Goodbye. That was a visit from Artemis. She pushed open the
Visit from
door and came
Artemis.
in.
Yeah.
A visit from Saint Artemis. Goodbye, Artemis.
Yep.
I don't want to slam the door in your tail. I mean, your tail in the door. Goodbye. Okay. She's gone. There is a cat in this story, apparently. There is a play in which a cat is spoken to with telepathy. Oh, by the way, you learn a lot about these plays that he goes to see, which are
Yes,
real
you do.
plays. Real plays that have been altered since it's been like many years, and these plays have been adapted. They have been updated. They've been modernized, which I find fascinating. Like we do with Shakespeare. Some of these plays
like
have been
that one version of Jesus Christ Superstar we saw.
Exactly. So the plays, some of these plays are like, well, they've set it in modern time and it doesn't really work. You hear him complain, but these are real plays. Mary Rose, which was written by J.M. Barrie. A play by Gore Vidal called Visit to a Small Planet, which sounds fascinating. I was just reading about it. But it does have, it's about an alien who comes to Earth and he communicates telepathically with the cat named Rosemary. And then out of boredom tries to start a war. And apparently if you know that play and you read this story is kind of a retelling in some ways of that play, with America being the alien, which is, I'm like, okay, great. Thank you, Gene Wolfe, for being smarter than I could ever hope to be. There's a lot of references to, there's a, well, not just 1001 Nights, but The Adventures of Haji Baba. Which is a story by James Morier that apparently is a big influence on this story. This story is just a puzzle box of references and allusions.
We
not
have
to mention
read
like
more than twice to go in full depth into it.
Not to mention that it
more
might
than one
be
episode.
Yeah, it might be a Christ allegory as well, since it's set. The story is set and is leading up to Easter Sunday based on the calendar they give us, but it ends on Maundy Thursday, and apparently, like, the bread is representative of the Eucharist, and the Cretan, the character of Cretan, his steps are reminiscent of the earthquake at Christ's like resurrection. But what you're supposed to get out of this is that America is the Christ figure. This is about the resurrection of America, but it's a dark parallel resurrection where the Eucharist is poison, and it's about how America has died but is trying to rise again. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, Gene Wolfe.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. I just can't. There's just so much. I highly recommend people seek this story out.
Oh yeah.
Like I highly recommend. We haven't even scratched the surface on everything that's in this story.
And it's also just a very good story.
That's the big thing. Is it's also just very entertaining. There's a story called Drayden in Love from thought I had it up here. Anyway, it's a Jeff Vandermeer story. I think it's here. Do I have it? No, they must all be downstairs. All my Jeff Vandermeers are still downstairs. It's called Drayden in Love, and it's about... And I kept thinking about it while I was reading this. It's about a young guy, all on his own, who arrives in a city where he's never been, that's very dark and foreboding, and he doesn't understand all the rules. He's staying by himself, and he's kind of like going a little nuts. And he sees a beautiful woman in the window of a factory and falls in love with her and starts conspiring to meet her because he's certain that they'll hit it off and be perfect for each other. And having read Drayden in Love a few times, reading this, I kept being reminded of it. Like, I think I don't know. There's something, I don't know if Jeff Vandermeer intended it as an homage, or if maybe I'm sure he's read this story. Maybe he's just read this story and like that feel was in the back of his head. But if you read Drayden in Love, it has a lot of this same feel. There's a lot of world building happening under the surface. So if you read the story, you get a feel for what this world is without them just coming right out and explaining everything. Except this is America.
It's a cool story.
Yeah.
It's a cool story.
This is America.
It is. That's our future.
It's also nice to see America presented as just like, it had its moment.
Yeah. Yep.
It threw it all away for long-lasting bread.
And long-lasting people.
Shouldn't have eaten all the people. Yeah, I mean, just trying to see. I'm looking at my outline. I'm trying to see if we've forgotten anything. You mentioned the guy with no lower jaw. He buys a gift for artists at one point that's made up of old money that's like worthless money now. Yeah, he eats an egg every day. Yep. Poison egg, yada yada yada. Yeah, I think we covered the story. It's just really
so
good.
much. Yeah,
There's
it's really
no
good story.
movie of it.
No.
It was never. I don't think it was ever adapted into anything. I could be wrong. Watch me be wrong. 7 American Nights, Gene Wolfe. No, it was never adapted into anything.
No. This is not one of those stories that would be easy to adapt.
I mean, I think you could. You just have to be careful about it. 7 American Nights. Yeah, there's no adaptations of this. Maybe I'll make a play of it.
Next Fringe Festival.
Maybe it should be directed by the guy who did Dune. Maybe it should be directed by him. He could do a good job with it.
I don't know. I always find that stories like this, when they're adapted into anything, tend to like solidify one of the theories rather than leaving it open.
Yeah. Like Guillermo del Toro's upcoming Frankenstein. Man, if that movie ends up not getting made,
if the line
people
sad trash isn't in that movie, I'm gonna be upset.
If it's not in the movie, we'll go see it and we'll just shout it out in the middle.
Yep.
And we're like, no, we're fans. Sad trash. In any case, who is your favorite character in 7 American Nights?
I liked the man who he bought the sandwich for that was really excited about his science.
Oh, yeah, because there's this whole discussion they have about language. Like,
And how scent is the true language.
yeah, like there's scent, and then you translate that into words, and then there's like writing and like reading, and like every step along the way you're losing more and more of your intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long part of the story, and it's fascinating.
And I like the guy. I like he's just so happy to talk about science. And I appreciate that about him. He's one of the guys working on the machine.
Oh, we didn't even get to mention that our protagonist gets to act on stage at one point.
Yeah,
one of
I
the
forgot about
actors gets arrested, and he has to fill in. Like, it's just there's so much happens, so much happens, and but it never feels like just incident. It pushes you forward.
Yeah.
Like everything happens for a reason. Things happen so that he has to be in the play so that they could ransack his room. It's
that thing where it's like you read it and you're like, this is all so well like put together, like is this a scheme or whatever? And then you like think back and you're like, if this was all written by AI, was it like this is a really convenient story?
right. Yeah. God. Yeah, it's so good. Do you think this is his writing? The older woman asked, opening the notebook at random. When the younger did not answer, she added, perhaps. Perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. Good story.
Highly
Good
recommend.
story.
I actually sent the name and author of the story to one of my friends so that he can read it.
Congratulations, Gene Wolfe.
You've done it.
You did it. You got to recommend. Well, speaking of wolves wearing jeans, what is the next story in the
has
Dark
nothing
Descent?
to do with that. It is The Signal Man by Charles Dickens.
Signal Man, Dickens all the way. Here comes The Signal Man, a story I have actually read quite a few times. It's very short.
Yeah.
It's very pithy. It's a very good story. It's a ghost story for Christmas time, so we are a little ahead of the game. But The Signal Man, and there are adaptations of The Signal Man.
I mean, there's adaptations of most things Charles Dickens has written.
Radio plays and TV plays. I can't think of what I was going to say. Sopra. I was gonna say opera,
There's
but then I
Doctor
said
Who episodes.
probably based on
There's
the
a whole
Signal Man.
There's a whole Doctor Who episode about Charles Dickens.
Oh yeah, no, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking there's Signal Man kind of feels like a Doctor Who episodes in some ways. I mean, I don't
The
want to
story
give
after that's
anything
by
away.
Stephen King.
What?
The story after this one is by Stephen King.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Signal Man has an episode of Suspense based on it, an episode of BBC's Ghost Stories for Christmas based on it, an episode of Beyond Midnight based on it. Elements from it were used in the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical The Woman in White.
Mm-hmm.
It was adapted for radio by the Columbia Workshop, The Weird Circle, Hall of Fantasy, Suspense, and Beyond Midnight. The Canadian Broadcasting Radio Company produced a production of it. A Brazilian filmmaker made a 15-minute short film. It was an audio drama in 2019 for Shadows at the Door of the Podcast. It was a Hindi radio drama, and a version of it was broadcast on Christmas Day on BBC Radio 4, starring Samuel West and James Purefoy, and that was in 2022. So there was
Are we
also an
gonna do our
episode of
own adaptation of this?
the Doctor Who episode The Unquiet Dead, in which the Doctor meets
Yep.
Charles Dickens. He mentions the Signal Man.
Mm-hmm.
So
We should do our own version of this story.
we just read it out loud, act it out.
Yeah.
Can you do a spooky voice?
Not right now.
Let's hear it.
No.
I'll do one.
What are you looking at? What are you looking at?
That's what
Sounds
ghosts
like-
say.
It sounds like the voice that someone would do for a sheep in like Adult Swim cartoon.
I don't even want to know what Adult Swim cartoon.
I am a sheep. What am I looking at?
I'm
The
wearing a
end of
ghost
an
hat.
episode.
I'm wearing a ghost hat. It is the end of an
You are.
episode.
Hat
Well,
is-
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending time with us when we talked about Seven American Nights. Gene Wolfe. Please join us next time when we talk about that man, that Dick man. Dick Chuck. Chuck Dick.
Charles Dickens, everyone.
Charles
When
the
we talk about
Dickens.
Signal Man.
Friend of Wilkie Collins himself, Charles Dickens, author of Drood. He died while writing it. Charles Dickens.
We saw that.
We did, the musical.
It was very fun.
Subway sandwiches.
And you had an homage to it in your stage show this year.
I did. I did. I mentioned that show, Drood, which we're not talking about next week. But join us next week for the Signal Man. I'll be your Signal Man. That way. I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And we'll see you when it's Del Toro
Del
time.
Toro time. Oh, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween!
Woo! We don't have a special Halloween episode this year.
This is it.